Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. Trump's big, beautiful bill heads for its final stage of voting in the US House of Representatives, despite Democrat Hakeem Jeffries' attempts to delay the process. Local health authorities say 94 Palestinians were killed in Gaza overnight, 45 of whom were waiting for much-needed aid. Sean Diddy Combs is denied bail by a New York judge after being convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution. And dead at 28, Liverpool football star Diogo Jota is killed after a car crash in Spain. His club say they are devastated by the news. The US House of Representatives are continuing to vote for President Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill as it reaches its final stage. Trump wants the major budget bill, which includes increases to defense and immigration capabilities and cuts to welfare, passed by Friday. The vote has been somewhat delayed because of a Democratic-led debate by Minority House Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who has been speaking for more than 7 hours. Let's catch up with our correspondent now, who's in Washington, Sara Firth. Sara, a pleasure to have you on. How close is the bill actually coming? Is it going to become law soon?
It's really close, Leigh-Ann, but you've had that bit of last-minute drama with the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, carrying out a filibuster against the big, beautiful bill. As you said, 7 hours and counting. Now, the record is 8 hours, 32 minutes, so just an hour and a half's time, and it looks like he will break that record. And the point of that, just to delay that final vote. As soon as he stops speaking, you'll have the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, speak, and then that final vote will take place. And Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, for his part, saying he does now have the Republican votes to get this bill passed, he says, when Jeffries finally stops speaking.
And it's been called Trump's signature domestic policy push, as it's certainly big, around 940 pages, Sara. Can you give us a quick breakdown, really, of what's actually in it and why this matters so much?
Yes, it's absolutely enormous, not just big, enormous. And in that, you've got a whole wealth of issues. You've got tax slashing, so tax cuts for many Americans and corporations. You've got some of the programs, welfare programs, what the president has termed bloated welfare programs, being potentially cut here. So we're talking Medicaid, we're talking food assistance in the form of food stamps. Those are just some of the issues, but you've also got a massive increase in defense spending and in border building. So a huge amount of money allocated to immigration enforcement. And those are things that we know really make up the backbone of President Trump's domestic policy in his second term. So this is hugely important to the president. We've seen him, as they pulled that all-nighter on Capitol Hill, getting involved, putting messages out on social media, trying to push Republicans to get this bill over the line. The Democrats holding out, saying that this is a massive betrayal of the American people. They say it's going to impact the lower income Americans. This is going to be affecting the most poor off in America and benefiting the wealthiest. But it does seem that Republicans have managed to overcome some internal differences and that they will have the votes, but that final vote can't take place until that filibuster has ended, and that's still going on right now.
Yes, we'll wait to see how long that does last. But you mentioned it there. There's been a little bit of internal infighting when it comes to the Republican Party. Why is this bill proving so divisive, even with Trump's own party?
Well, look, Leigh-Ann, it's about the math here, the money and the messaging. So you've got the fiscal conservatives. They do not like the $1 trillion price tag on this. More than $3 trillion, it's estimated, will be added to government debt as a result of the spending in this bill. That's displeased many on the fiscally conservative side. Then you've got the Democrats who are coming out and saying, look, cuts to things like Medicaid, food assistance programs, that is going to disproportionately affect the lower income Americans in this country that can't afford to lose those federal safety nets. So that is where you've got the Democrats coming out and calling this, just a nightmare for many American people. You've got even within the Republican Party, cracks have shown, Leigh-Ann. They've had some dispute over different parts of the bill. This has been through the Senate. It's had amendments. And so right up until this early hours of this morning, it looked like possibly some Republicans were going to vote against the bill. It seems, though, that they've been gotten back on track, that they're all on message, and we will wait to see whether they do get that final vote across the line before President Trump's self-imposed deadline of July 4th, the American Independence Day.
Yeah, absolutely. We all know that that day is tomorrow. But you touched on it a little bit there for me, Sarah. But if it passes and is signed into law, which we do expect to happen as soon as the Democrats have stopped speaking, what will this mean for ordinary Americans? You've talked about the cuts to Medicaid, the cuts to SNAP, but what else is involved?
Well, look, Leigh-Ann, I've been speaking to many Americans in the process of this big, beautiful bill going through all the different stages. There is real concern amongst ordinary Americans about what this is going to mean for them. To summarize it briefly, for the wealthiest Americans, for corporate America, there's some real wins in there. You've got tax cuts, you've got benefits that are going to boost a lot of that wealth. When it comes to the lower income Americans, though, again, it's the programs like Medicaid, Leigh-Ann, that so many lower income Americans so depend on for their healthcare. Food stamps, those types of issues are causing real concern because it's going to be millions of Americans potentially impacted, losing access to that healthcare. Now, the Republicans say that this is necessary to cut the bloat out of the system, but there is concern. One way or another, Americans, both wealthy and lower income in the country, they are going to feel this in their pockets in the years to come.
And finally, Sarah, I'm actually just seeing some breaking news lines that Putin and Donald Trump spoke for nearly an hour on the telephone. What more do we have about this meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin, which has been going on today?
Yes, so President Trump putting out on his social media that that phone call would be taking place with Russia's President Vladimir Putin. I think it's the sixth time that they've gone publicly had these conversations since you had Trump coming back in for his second term. Likely top of the agenda is going to be Ukraine. This call is coming just a couple of days after we got the information from the Pentagon that they were going to be withholding some of that military assistance to Ukraine. That's raised some eyebrows, even within the Republican Party. We have to wait and see. You don't ever really get a readout from these phone calls. Sometimes, though, you do have the president, of course, putting out his summary of what actually took place in the call on social media. So we're watching very closely to see if that comes. But a very important phone call that has been going on, as you rightly said, for a number of hours now, it seems, with the two discussing possibly some of the most major ongoing conflicts at the moment, predominantly the conflict in Ukraine. Just interesting to note, Republican Mike Pompeo said, with regards to the US cutting military assistance, if Russia is allowed to win this war, he called it would be an unmitigated disaster. So a lot of raised eyebrows, a lot of people watching for the outcome of that phone call today, Leigh-Ann.
Yes, indeed, Sarah. And we've just had some more breaking lines through from a Kremlin aide. There was no concrete discussion of a Putin-Trump face-to-face meeting. And also Putin told Trump that Russia will not step back from its goals in Ukraine. So thank you so much for bringing us the latest on that. Sara Firth in Washington. Once again, thank you. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. 7 people are missing and 2 survivors are being treated for injuries after an explosion at a fireworks facility in Northern California. Local news footage shows the building being consumed by a huge fireball 40 miles from Sacramento. The cause is being investigated by the fire marshal. Hundreds have been evacuated on the Greek island of Crete as wildfires continue to burn. The flames, fanned by gale-force winds, have spread over 6 kilometres, with homes and tourist accommodation at risk. Smoke has also made visibility difficult, according to emergency services. At least 5 people are dead and dozens other missing after a ferry sunk off the coast of Bali. 53 passengers and 12 crew were on board. 31 people have been rescued as authorities investigate the cause of the sinking. And Ozzy Osbourne is preparing to perform for the last time alongside his original Black Sabbath bandmates. The rock star, nicknamed the Prince of Darkness, will play to crowds at Villa Park in Birmingham this Saturday. The 76-year-old, who now suffers with Parkinson's, will headline the all-day stadium show, which also features other heavy metal bands, including Metallica, Slayer and Rage Against the Machine. Now, 94 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza overnight, including 45 people who were waiting for humanitarian aid. That's according to the Gazan Health Ministry. Earlier this week, President Trump announced Israel had agreed to a 60-day ceasefire deal. Meanwhile, Hamas said they were considering the deal but wanted a complete end to the war. A Hamas delegation were meeting Egyptian and Qatari mediators in Cairo this week to discuss the proposal. I'm now joined by Dr. Jamal Abdul Jawad, Senior Research Fellow at the Ahram Center for Strategic Studies. Dr. Jamal, pleasure to have you on the show. First of all, the Gaza death toll passes 57,000 today, with little clarity on a potential ceasefire. Yesterday, a Hamas delegation met Egyptian and Qatari mediators in Cairo to discuss the proposal. Are we any closer to an agreement?
Well, there is a feeling of déjà vu. We have been in this situation many times in the past months, getting close to a deal, and then before reaching the real end, negotiations collapse. The new element this time is that we are in the post-Israeli-Iranian war, I would say, a situation in which the American President Trump, feels strengthened and ready to lead a sort of a peace process towards de-escalation in Gaza. He feels that the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is indebted to him and should be ready to respond positively to the plans coming and suggested by the American president. So we'll see whether this new element will make a difference really in terms of the Israeli and also, of course, Hamas readiness to move forward toward a ceasefire.
The human rights group Amnesty International has condemned the Aid Distribution Foundation, GHF, saying it's committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. Do you agree with this analysis and the humanitarian situation unfolding in Gaza?
Israel has been searching for an alternative for the regular and the most common and experienced organizations specialized in distributing food and aid to the people in Gaza. UNRWA in particular has been severely criticized by Israel and actually banned now by the Israeli authorities from working in any region that is where Israel has the authority and the political power. And trying to create an alternative for that so far has been a complete failure. And this is what we are seeing now. The death toll that we are talking about today and yesterday, actually, I would say this is a daily toll. It's the average of 50 people killed every day trying to reach for the food distribution centers testify for the failure of those arrangements and the need for moving back toward more conventional, more experienced organization. And again here, UNRWA is still a great and qualified alternative. The challenge is that the United States is sharing the same position with Israel, and they together create a kind of a strong obstacle for bringing back UNRWA. So yes, it's a genocide. Yes, it's a part of a policy that is trying to make Gaza a place that is unlivable, where people can no longer continue living, force them to find other place to migrate to other places. Israel and the United States has been suggesting that the people of Gaza should be moved to somewhere else, to Sinai in Egypt. Egypt, of course, resisted that. The people of Palestine themselves rejected that. So it's an attempt to get rid of the Palestinian rather than of helping the Palestinian there. And this is the part of the problem, actually, that is, it looks a humanitarian dimension of the problem, but actually it is fully integrated in the political and strategic makeup of the situation in Gaza and of the Israeli-Palestinian relationship.
Dr. Jamal, as you mentioned there, Egypt borders the Gaza Strip. Is Egypt taking in refugees from Palestine at all? And could Egypt be doing more to get aid into the country and to starving people? Because Rafah is on the border with Egypt.
Since the beginning of the conflict, there is a number in the vicinity of 150,000 Palestinians from Gaza that moved to Egypt. Those are whether people who have relatives who live in Egypt or injured people who have been moved to Egypt to receive medical care with the support family members. A number of around 150,000 Palestinians from Gaza are already now in Egypt, but allowing a massive migration of Palestinians to Gaza, this will be from Gaza to Sinai, this will be, I would say, Egypt contributing and participating in achieving the Israeli goal. Israel, and particularly this Israeli government, want to get rid of the largest possible number of Palestinians to make the territories of the Palestinians ready for maybe Israeli settlement, to fight against the demographic imbalance where Palestinian population is growing in a kind of a rapid rate compared to Israel. So Israelis are concerned about this kind of demographic changes that are happening. So it comes down to providing aid, to providing Palestinians with the necessary items needed for them to survive in Palestine itself on their own homeland. Egypt has been the source of the largest part of humanitarian aid that have been presented to Palestinian people since the beginning of the conflict. But since Israel has occupied the Philadelphia corridor on the Egyptian-Israeli border, the Rafah corridor the Rafah crossing has been shut down, and Israel is not allowing food trucks and aid to come through it to reach to the Palestinians, which caused a great reduction in the amount of humanitarian aid reaching to the Palestinian people. So, in one word, Egypt is ready. However, how the conflict is going, the Israeli policy of occupying the Rafah crossing from the other side and the Philadelphia road. All those things not allowing actually Egypt to continue doing what it has been doing since the beginning of the conflict, providing the Gazans with a great part of what is needed for them to continue surviving.
Dr. Jamal Abdul Jawad, a senior research fellow at the Ahram Center for Strategic Studies. A pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me. Now, Sean Diddy Combs has been denied bail by a New York judge after a jury found the music mogul guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution. Combs was acquitted of the more serious charges of racketeering and sex trafficking, but Judge Arun Subramaniam said he must remain behind bars until his sentencing because of his history of violence. He will be held at the same federal jail in Brooklyn and is due to be sentenced on the 3rd of October. We can now speak to entertainment journalist Josh Rom. Josh, a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us. First of all, Diddy was cleared of 2 of the major charges yesterday, but he was also denied bail. Lots of twists and turns in that case. Are you surprised?
I'm not particularly surprised that he was denied bail because, as you said there in the introduction, the 2 counts that he was convicted of, guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution, these are 2 very serious crimes under the Mann Act, both of which carry a sentence of a maximum of 10 years. So it's looking more than likely that that Sean Diddy Combs, otherwise known as P. Diddy, will serve jail time, significant jail time. However, when it came to his acquittal of the other counts, that also didn't surprise me because all the way through the trial, we saw the evidence from his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. We've all seen that video of Diddy engaging in domestic violence in that hotel corridor. And the defense's case was yes, Sean Diddy Combs, he might be a bad man, he might even be an immoral man, but when it comes to racketeering, the most serious charge, that's about a criminal enterprise to commit crimes including sex trafficking, kidnapping, drugging, and obstruction of justice as well. So yes, whilst he might be a bad man and has committed crimes in other ways such as domestic violence, were his freak-offs a criminal enterprise? And for the prosecution to prove that, that was always going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. He's been in the same facility since last September, and he'll actually remain there until sentencing, which is at the beginning of October. That's over a year, Josh, that he's been sort of locked up. So presumably, what time would get taken off his sentence? You said he could get a considerable sentence.
Yeah, so we're looking at 2 counts with a maximum sentence of up to 10 years each. So, of course, the time that he spent on remand will come out of that time. And it's looking likely that each of those 2 counts will be served concurrently rather than consecutively, unless there are necessarily aggravating factors there, more aggravating factors there. But we're still, I think, looking at least a substantial sentence. I know a lot of lawyers are saying 2 years at the very minimum, perhaps 5 years, maybe even 10 years there when it comes, because he's been convicted of two different acts, 2 different counts. So we're still looking at a substantial jail term. But yes, the time that he served on remand will be deducted, I think, from the final sentence. However, that still doesn't take away the fact as well that P. Diddy is now a convicted felon.
And what does this result mean for the people who came out and spoke out against Diddy? Like you mentioned there was Cassie Ventura. The judge didn't bail him because they thought he was dangerous, and those witnesses worried about what will happen when he does get out.
Well, I think that's a question to answer for when he does get out, because I think the judge made it very clear that he's not going to be getting out anytime soon. The fact is that, yes, he might have been acquitted of the most serious charges, and therefore his whole entire life is not going to be served in prison. We're still looking at a substantial jail term. So I think, from what we kind of saw from Cassie Ventura's, from her camp, they were at least pleased with some of the verdict, that, her testimony was at least well received. It wasn't a completely unanimous verdict, clear on all accounts. She was believed to a certain extent there. I think the fact is he's still going to be in jail for a substantial amount of time. So I don't think it's going to be necessarily a huge worry for those that testified until he gets released from prison per se. However, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen when it comes to the showbiz world.
And let's talk about that, because, of course, you're a showbiz journalist. What do you think it will do for his career? And could we see more of his famous friends actually standing by him after all of this? Because many haven't come out in support. I think it was Kanye West who did. But what does the future hold?
Well, there's a number of aspects here, because, of course, Kanye West, whilst he's still a very popular rapper, he still sells millions of records, he still sells merchandise. Of course, he himself is seen as a toxic figure within the industry, and I don't think he necessarily has the fan base that he once has. And also saying that, of course, we live in an era of post Time's Up, post Me Too. So when it comes to sex crimes in particular, they're seen in a very different way when it comes to what the industry thinks of people. It's not just a bad Twitter or cancellation. He is, for all intents and purposes, he is very much a convicted felon. And, we've seen big names that have kind of been associated with these quote unquote freak-offs. And we've seen celebrities run for the hills. Huge names have been mentioned, from the likes of Jay-Z, Usher. Bieber was not necessarily mentioned in the freak-offs because he was young, but it was a case of what has he seen, what has he heard. I think celebrities and people high up in the industry are going to probably want to avoid him like the plague, because right now his name is very much toxic. We've all seen the video of him engaging in domestic violence with Cassie Ventura. Her testimony in court has been heard or quoted around the world. So P. Diddy, when it comes to a comeback in a few years, I'm not quite sure if I could see the likes of Jay-Z or Usher ever collaborating with him again. And then we've also seen previous proteges like Aubrey O'Day release these huge damning statements against him. We're seeing a lot of female rappers, female R&B singers, female artists speak up against P. Diddy in the industry. I think, like Hollywood post Time's Up and Me Too, when it was Harvey Weinstein, I think P. Diddy has represented a real day of reckoning for the entertainment industry as a whole, because people see it for exactly what it is: people at the top taking advantage and using their power for nefarious purposes.
Entertainment journalist Josh Ahram, a pleasure to have your insights. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's take a look at the top business news now. President Trump has urged Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell to resign immediately. It follows a report urging an investigation into Powell's testimony on Fed building renovations. Trump, who first nominated Powell, has often criticized him over interest rates. Powell says he won't step down and he cannot be removed without cause under U.S. law. Microsoft will cut up to 9,000 jobs in its latest round of layoffs this year. The company said several divisions would be affected without specifying which ones. The move comes as Microsoft invests $80 billion in AI and data centers. The company says the cuts reflect adjustments to a dynamic marketplace. Turning to all the sports news now, and rugby fly half Owen Farrell has been called up to the British and Irish Lions tour of Australia, replacing injured utility back Elliot Daly. The selection made by coach and father Andy Farrell has sparked debate, as Owen hasn't played since May and hasn't featured in international rugby since 2023. The Lions face the Warringtons next, with that first test on the 19th of July. And British tennis star Emma Raducanu has cruised past defending champion Marketa Vondrousova to reach Wimbledon's last 32. It sets up a blockbuster clash with world #1 Aryna Sabalenka. Raducanu, back in form after recent struggles, called it one of her best matches in years. Her aggressive play and home comfort appear to be fueling a strong Wimbledon run. Staying with sports now, and the 28-year-old Liverpool forward and Portugal international Diogo Jota has died in a car crash in Spain. Local police say his vehicle suffered a blown-out tyre and left the road. Jota's brother, Andre Silva, also died in the crash. Liverpool FC say they are devastated by what they called an unimaginable loss. Fans have been gathering outside Anfield all day, paying tribute to the star. Take a listen.
Absolutely gutted. There's not a word that I can think that's making me sad at the moment. It's just devastating, absolute devastation. But for the player it was and is, it's just unbelievable news. I just can't.
You don't know these people personally, but when you do lose somebody in this fashion, it's devastating. It's going to affect everybody. It's like losing somebody that's really, really close to you. And football pales into insignificance in times like this. He leaves 3 children, a wife, his brothers passed away with him, his poor mother and father, what they must be going through. I mean, it's just absolutely devastating. It's unbelievable.
Let's get the latest with sports broadcaster and journalist Tusdiq Din. Thank you so much for joining us today. Shocking and absolutely tragic news about Diogo Jota. For our audience who do not follow football, who was Diogo and how integral was he to the Liverpool football team?
A shocking day all round, as you say there, Lee. Even fans who are not Liverpool fans but are fans of football will have woken up today with a sense of disbelief. This young, talented player started his career at Pacos for Atletico Madrid. The move then came from Porto to Wolves, and then £41 million is what Jurgen Klopp paid Wolves for his services. Clearly a talented individual. In that campaign where he was in the West Midlands, Jota helped the club climb from a mid-championship team into the Premier League. He won promotion with them, and then they were successful in a Europa League campaign where he scored back-to-back hat-tricks. Now, his talent was then picked up elsewhere. He was on the radar of big clubs, but it was at Liverpool that he really shone. He was one of these that Jurgen Klopp said, look, he's a dedicated football person. He looks after himself. He trains hard. He pushes on the front foot. He can go left, right. He can score with his head, as fans of opposing teams can attest to. But what we saw with Jota was a humility. There was a normal person there, as the fan who was in the clip just before mentioned. We don't know these people. We see them play, but we can relate to their situation with regards to how they perceived and how they are perceived and how they portray themselves. And he certainly did, Diogo Jota, look after himself. He had 49 caps for Portugal. They just won the Nations League with the Portuguese side, and his whole future was ahead of him. But what happened, unfortunately, the news from northwest Spain, that he now leaves his young wife, Rota Cardoza, and 3 children without a father. And sadly for him, a career that promised so much at the age of 28 has very tragically come to an end. just on the border with his nation, with Portugal in northwest Spain. And we all mourn, all around football, all away from football, are mourning his loss. He was a League Cup winner, an FA Cup winner with Liverpool. He won the Premier League at the season just gone by. And also, as just mentioned, the Nations Cup, which meant a lot to him. He was a patriotic Portuguese national and someone that, I had the pleasure of watching on a few occasions. And, he was just fantastic to watch, great skills. He knew where the goal was, and he was a team player in a side that had Mohamed Salah, Cody Gakpo, you can name them all, Darwin Luis Diaz. He just shone in a way that his humility took him through, and someone of the likes which he and his brother Andre will be missed.
Yeah, absolutely. As you described there, not just a footballer, but a man, a family man, a 28-year-old family man with his life ahead of him. Fans have been laying tributes outside Anfield Stadium today. How is the city of Liverpool paying tribute to a player who actually just recently celebrated winning the Premier League? And we saw those celebrations in the city.
Yeah, Liverpool are devastated with the actual passing of Diogo Jota, and the club, they have been fantastic. Whenever they do anything on any sense, good or bad, obviously in this case it's very tragic, the club really know how to look after the community there. It's divided into two, as we know, red of Liverpool and the blue of Everton. But what we saw outside the club, there are areas set aside with buckets provided by the club for the immense amount of flowers that have been put down in commemoration of a very tragic young life and a talented individual. High-profile individuals like the Mayor of Liverpool, Steve Rotherham, has been in attendance, as has the Deputy Labour leader, Angela Rayner, to offer their condolences. And the fans are just saying, look, we just cannot believe it. Anybody involved in football, anyone who's loved football at any level will just empathise and just sympathise so very much with regards to the story that we see unfolding in front of us. With disbelief, a young widow, the partner, Rota Corduzo, I mentioned, they've been together for the best part of their lives, and 3 young children that they had together, and their marriage was only finalized and celebrated 11 days ago, I believe. And the video on social media was released only yesterday. Such happy scenes, and in complete contrast to what we are witnessing today. And, we certainly mourn, as do the club Liverpool. They are class in everything they do. But word must be mentioned to his first Premier League club in England, Wolverhampton Wanderers, and the statement they put out, memories he created will never be forgotten, about sums up everything that he gave. He gave his heart, his soul, and tragically today, he gave his life.
Tusdiq Din, sports broadcaster and journalist, thank you so much for bringing us that latest on Diogo, who has died at the age of 28, the Liverpool footballer. Appreciate it. Now, the Dalai Lama, the exiled spiritual leader, has told his followers he will be reincarnated as the head of Tibetan Buddhism when he dies. The announcement comes after years of uncertainty and fear over whether he would be the last in a line of Tibetan spiritual leaders stretching back centuries. However, Beijing said only it can choose the Dalai Lama's successor, and it has to be approved by the central government. Camille Nedelec reports.
In this city of exile, the Dalai Lama is thinking of the future, a future that puts Tibetan Buddhism once more on a collision course with China. Just a few days before his 90th birthday, the religious leader announced at an annual Tibetan conference that his foundation has the sole authority to approve his reincarnation.
They should consult the various heads of the Tibetan Buddhist traditions and the reliable oath-bound Dharma protectors who are linked inseparably to the lineage of the Dalai Lamas. They should accordingly carry out the procedures of search and recognition in accordance with past tradition.
The Dalai Lama has said his successor will be born outside of China because he doesn't want to be born somewhere he does not think is free. And he has told his followers to reject any leader chosen by Beijing. The 14th Dalai Lama fled Tibet after a failed uprising against China in 1959, and he's been living in exile ever since. Beijing views him as a separatist and says it will have the final say over whoever replaces him.
The Chinese government implements a policy of freedom of religious belief and has issued regulations on religious affairs and the management of the reincarnation of living Buddhas in Tibetan Buddhism, protecting this way of succession in accordance with the law.
Tibetan Buddhists believe upon the death of their Dalai Lama, the leader's soul is reincarnated into the body of a child. It's a tradition in Tibetan Buddhism that stretches back hundreds of years. After having previously said he might not be reincarnated at all, his followers are relieved that the Dalai Lama now has a succession plan in place.
It's very important. I feel his Institute of Dalai Lama is continuous, of course. It's very, very important. So not even for the Tibetan people, it's important for this Mother Earth.
The leader's 90th birthday on Sunday will mark the culmination of a week of celebrations. Camille Nedelec, Arabiya.
A reminder of our top stories. Trump's big, beautiful bill heads for its final stage of voting in the US House of Representatives, despite Democrat Hakeem Jeffries' attempts to delay the process. Local health authorities say 94 Palestinians were killed in Gaza overnight, 45 of whom were waiting for much-needed aid. Sean Diddy Combs is denied bail by a New York judge after being convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution. And dead at 28, Liverpool football star Diogo Jota is killed after a car crash in Spain. His club say they are devastated by the news. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also follow us on X. We'll be back in a couple of hours' time with W News Extra. Goodbye and thank you.